Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysAdmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysAdmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin, or you can buy merchandise. News, ops, and a little bit of paranoia. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. Welcome, everyone, to tonight's episode of the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. I'm your host, Nate, and as you can tell, we've got a crowded stream tonight. You recognize two of the hosts. Go ahead, guys. Fight over who gets to introduce each other first.
I hope so. That's Jason right there.
Okay. Now,
Mark's over there.
Yay!
This way? This way, I think.
Somewhere.
This way.
Somewhere on the screen. I don't know.
that way.
This way?
And tonight we're joined by a special
I
guest.
feel like we're on the Brady Bunch now.
What happened? Why is your video gone, Jason?
I didn't do it.
What did you do?
I did not.
What?
Didn't do anything to it.
Oh my god.
Should call the neighbor kids to help.
We're just gonna ignore Jason until he figures out what's wrong. It's probably your ISP. Just blame them.
I didn't do anything.
I don't know. Your video's gone, man.
I assume you can hear me.
Yeah, but
Barely.
it's robotic. I
Barely.
think you're probably having some bandwidth problems.
Go tell your kids to stop streaming stuff.
Curious.
Yeah.
There's kids in the house. We got rid of them.
Oh,
Wow. We just trampled all over poor Jerry's introduction. Tonight
Well,
we're
why don't
joined
you
with a
try
special
again?
guest, Jerry. Hi, Jerry. Would you like to tell us who
Jerry!
you are and maybe why you're here?
Absolutely. My name is Jerry Bell. I guess I'm not entirely sure why I'm here, except I think I created kind of a mess on social media.
Is it your fault?
Uh,
Did you do
so-
it? No, you didn't do it. You didn't create the mess. You're just.
No, I didn't. I didn't create the mess, but I guess I was a little involved in it.
Oh, okay.
So I set up a server actually it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Was I was playing the long game. I knew way back then that this was going to happen. So I set up a server called Infosec.exchange, which runs a software called Mastodon, which is part of a federated social media network, and was kind of well timed ahead of the kind of collapse of Twitter.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Infosec community is kind of picked up and moved over. So it's been pretty exciting.
Yeah. So, I guess let's step back for just a sec here. Jerry, folks may recognize your voice already because you've got a longer podcasting career than any of us here on the show. You might recognize Jerry
together.
from the Defensive Security Podcast. I know you guys don't record as often as you used to, but to be honest, you guys had, and I guess still have, a pretty darn good show. You and Lurg. Andy, right? Yeah, Andy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, when...
Hey, Nate.
What?
William in chat is asking if we can get Jerry's audio up.
Oh, you're still too quiet? We can do that. Can we do that?
I'll turn it up on my side.
Oh, much better.
Yeah, Jerry just has a naturally mellow voice, which is...
He's
I-
chill,
I
man.
do.
You listen to him and you want to paint happy little landscapes with happy little trees and happy little mountains.
He does ASMR in his spare time.
It's part of the whole CISO gig. Is you've got to be like, if you're super wound up, you think you just end up having a heart attack.
We're going to open the firewall ports now. Okay. Port 22. Now, port 80.
Look for the
Yes.
happy little
The
packets.
little web server.
This is our happy little web server. All right, so the reason we wanted to have Jerry on the show, and he's already alluded to some of this. So you guys might be familiar with this whole thing called Twitter and the disaster that has occurred in the past 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
They changed
Just a
hands,
little over
right?
2 weeks.
Sorry, go ahead.
Was October 27th. It was a day that I will never forget.
So Twitter's in kind of a shambles, right? And folks, I don't know, there's some cross section of InfoSec folks who listen to the show, but a lot of people maybe are outside of InfoSec and don't really know this. But InfoSec, for whatever reason, has chosen Twitter as kind of their home, right? A lot of communication for information security happens on Twitter. And
Yes.
when things started to look bleak for Twitter because of the change of ownership and some of the craziness that's going on there and some of the, frankly, instability that we've seen out of the service, folks started looking for another place to put their social media. Jerry has for years run a Mastodon instance, and I even had an account on there. And for whatever reason, probably for the same reason a lot of people had accounts there and weren't actively using it, people just like there weren't a lot of people there, right? I mean, how many? Do you have any idea how many actual active users you had before all this happened?
So on October 26th, there were 180 active users, maybe 2 or 3 at any given time.
Okay, and this, I probably should have written all this down, right? So, I guess what was the reason you even had this up and running to begin with? Were you just curious about Mastodon? Did you see the end coming because social media is just such a terrible place? Like,
it's I've been asked this question a bunch of times recently, and I have to tell you, I don't actually remember why I did it. It's been so darn long ago. Um, it I'm just that kind of person though. Like I
yeah,
see something and I want to start playing with it, and so I registered. I'm pretty sure I just registered a domain. I bought a VPS. I stood it up, and I mean it was a little playground. And over the course of 4 5 years, I had to upgrade the VPS a couple of times. But yeah, it was just it was always a hobby type situation.
yeah, and I remember when folks first started talking about Mastodon, and I didn't exactly have the infrastructure to build it at the time, but I did poke around at it. Like I tried standing it up on my own. It didn't really work out so well for my own purposes. And the big thing is like social media only works when you have a decent sized user base, right? Otherwise, you
Mhm.
can't really have that interaction that you do on the big outlets, right? So because of that, people would check these things out. I've had an interest in decentralized social media for quite a while. Jason, you probably remember when I got excited about Diaspora when it first released, right? Which was, I think, as far as I know, is much older than Mastodon. It may not be, but the problem has always been that there's no one there to talk to, right?
Right.
And but the benefits have always been the exact things that people are experiencing now on Mastodon, which is it's not controlled by any one company, which means that it's not controlled by the interests of a money-making machine, which means that you get to control the content you see. You can block whoever you want. You can, in the case of Mastodon and Diaspora and all the others that are federated like this, you can even like wall yourself off from the rest of the network if you really wanted to, and have just your own little local community. And the big thing is there's no ad campaigns that are controlling your feed, right? So those are all the wonders, I think, of this sort of self-hosted model. The problem is everybody's so bought into the bigger networks because that's where all the people are, right? So, and I assume that's the same problem you were seeing on your own instance.
Absolutely. It was it was a very niche community, right? There were just not a lot of not a critical mass of people. The people that were there just were they were either it was also a hobby for them, or they just swore off kind of mainstream social media, and that was their thing.
Right, right. So a couple years ago, I remember a lot of people were starting to notice how sort of toxic Twitter had gotten, right? And that was there were a number of reasons of why that was happening. Part of it was, the folks controlling Twitter were trying to do things to monetize it, and there's of course algorithms that help promote certain content based on what's popular. And a lot of people know this already, but that sort of breeds toxicity because the stuff that gets the most engagement is generally the stuff that's the most controversial, right? So I know there were a lot of people that even way back then started to vacate Twitter. And I don't know if that's part of why you stood up what you have. You said you're not really sure. You don't remember why. That's fine. Um, all right, so that sort of covers like why did it exist in the first place, and I guess it kind of leads into maybe what happened on what you said October 27th, right? So I don't know if like what critical mass there was there, but you want to like share just like kind of like what happened that night? Were you just like having
Yeah,
dinner and all of
well,
a sudden everything's broken?
I want to rewind
Sure.
to back to the spring because the, when um, when Elon Musk first made the announcement that he was going to buy Twitter, there was an exodus. There was it was a much smaller
Yeah.
exodus at the time, and I was running the server on a VPS, and it was already pretty slow. But like there were 4 or 5 people, so who really cared? Anyway, for several days, it was completely unusable because people were trying to create accounts and log in, and so I kind of swallowed hard and decided to go and actually rent a real server for it. And so I went to Hetzner and rented a pretty significant server. It was AMD 5950 with 16 cores and 128 gigs of RAM and NVMe SSDs,
Nice.
and it actually worked super well. I mean, it was like lightning fast.
That sucker can run a modern version of Microsoft Word. Outstanding.
It's almost enough to have 2 tabs open in Chrome. Yep. Um, so anyway, I was at my down at the beach. I have a place in Panama City, and I don't exactly remember where I was at the time, but uh, there, the way I found out about it was people were on Twitter. I was getting tagged a bunch, and so my phone was kind of lighting up, and so I logged on. I logged on the Mastodon, and at the time there were, I think, I'd gone from 180 users to like 1,000 users. That's pretty
Wow.
cool. That's pretty cool. And then it was 2,000 users, and then it was 3,000, and then it was 4,000, and then the site crashed.
Now, it was in the spring.
No, this was October. This was the
Oh, October. Okay.
yeah. I rebuilt it.
So the spring you bought a physical box
Right.
and rebuilt it.
Right.
And then October 27th, E-Day we'll call it,
E-Day.
because Elon, right?
That's very
Is
creative, Mark.
when the shit really hit the fan.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it was it reminded me, if some of you remember back to the .com days of the I think it was the UPS commercial, where the little small businesses, they launch their website and they get an order and they all cheer. There's 2 orders cheer, and suddenly it just starts going up into the thousands of orders, and they start to panic. It kind of felt like that. So I spent the next couple of days quite literally chasing after scalability problems on that particular server. I would run out of file handles. I would fix that. I would run out of processes. I would fix that, or run out of database connections. I would fix that. And eventually, I got it to a pretty stable spot where it was not going to run out of any of those kind of basic um, the basics. And then it was about Sunday, maybe it was Saturday. So two whole days later, where it just, even having fixed all of that stuff, the server just couldn't keep up. It was people would post an image and it would take 10 minutes for it to render. It was it was pretty bad again.
Yee.
And so I got pretty aggressive. I pulled the old credit card out, and I started buying renting new servers, which is what I am currently running today. One of the most significant ones is I bought an AMD EPIC 32 core processor
Epic.
with 400 gigs of RAM.
Dang.
And, I'm like, I'm not going to have this problem again. I'm done.
And you're just running Mastodon right on top of the metal, right? You're not like virtualizing or something like that.
No, not virtualized. So today the front end is this EPIC system. The EPIC system runs Nginx and Minio. for S3 storage.
Okay.
And then the database server is off on a separate system, which was the old, the
Front
old
end.
server, but it is only running Postgres. It's the only thing running on it. It's probably overspec'd for what it needs. I have another one of those same 5950s that's running Elasticsearch and Redis. Then I have another two of those servers that are solely running Sidekick jobs.
Dang.
Now, for folks at home, maybe I think a lot of us understand, the database. That's pretty important. That's probably how where it stores the toots in, even though they're not called toots anymore.
They're
The
still
S3, I guess that's where like the images are. So that's like you've got
That's right.
some object storage on that front end server.
Correct.
So what is Sidekick? I mean, I know what it is, but like maybe J Scar doesn't know what that is, and he's on YouTube right now.
So
So what is Sidekick, and why is that a big deal?
Yeah, Sidekick is kind of the heart of how Mastodon works. Mastodon's kind of innards are processed in a series of queues, and those queues are orchestrated.
Q, get off my ship. Sorry.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Within
Keyword
within
fired.
Redis database. And so basically you have these queues. Anytime you post something, it gets picked up by one of these queue runners, and it either delivers it out to other instances, it posts media into the S3 bucket, it whatever the case might be. If you're registering a new account, it is what sends the email. And so it's basically the thing that does all of the work. And I will tell you, those Sidekick jobs are the thing that just made me crazy over the course of almost a week, because they were what kept running out of memory. They kept running out of file handles. They kept running out of network connections. That just I kept running into different limitations with those, and so learned a crap load about them. I had, by the way, I've been working on Linux. I mean, I actually started with BSD in 1992.
You were
So
down with
I will-
BSD.
I have worked a lot with Unix, and I learned more in the past maybe 3 weeks than I think I have in the previous 30 years.
Yeah. So I guess one of the take-home messages, and I think a lot of our listeners will get this, is that if you want to stand up a Mastodon server, you're not downloading an exe, saving it to your Windows 11 machine, and double-clicking an icon. It really is a bunch of different components working together, probably on different boxes.
There are a number of bundled options that you can, like DigitalOcean, for example. I've seen a lot of instance admins saying that they stood it up on DigitalOcean by using the one-click. You click and run, and boom, you've got Mastodon.
Right.
Now, the downside to that is if you run into the problem that Jerry did, I don't know how easy it is to expand that later. I don't know how much administration you can get in under the covers. Now, knowing how DigitalOcean works, it probably just spun up a bunch of droplets that you can then get into and do things, but I haven't seen how it looks. Mine is running on a VM in my basement in containers, so I could theoretically split those containers onto separate machines if I wanted to, right? So, but that's the beauty of this kind of architecture, right? In the old days, you had this, I guess we still use the term monoliths, right? Where like the whole application is one big code base, and it's almost impossible to split out. Whereas Mastodon and many applications today are built in a way that it's these modular pieces. I don't know if I'd call those microservices exactly, but they're jobs that run on different pieces that can then be expanded and moved onto other machines, which is great, right? Otherwise, you might not have been able to do what you did, Jerry.
Right.
So
It is absolutely scalable. And again, I've if I knew then what I know today, I probably would have made some different decisions. But it actually is quite scalable. You can actually run an arbitrary number of web front ends. You can run an arbitrary number of Sidekick servers. Once you get into like I don't honestly know if there's a way to cluster Redis. Certainly, you can cluster Postgres, but it is quite scalable.
sounds like a good candidate for Kubernetes type stuff.
Oh,
Where
yeah,
if it's
yeah.
if it
Yeah,
spikes, it can just spool up more pods.
Mhm.
The containers, I would think, absolutely would run well inside of a Kubernetes type environment. In
Yeah,
fact,
definitely.
I want to say the Mastodon code base comes with a Helm chart that you can just pop right into Kubernetes, which would get you closer to that easy button deployment, right? If you're
Sure.
I'm what
capable of
you
running
call container
Kubernetes.
hesitant. See, I'm what you call container hesitant.
Container hesitant, yeah. So Mark and I work for Red Hat. We're obligated to talk about containers at least once every time we breathe.
Yeah, but I said Kubernetes and not the
You
actual
did.
thing we sell.
You did. You did.
Trying to be neutral.
Container hesitant. No, container deployments aren't for everybody. To be honest, I've been tinkering with containers for, my gosh, a decade at this point. It started with Docker and now Podman. And it was only in the past couple years where I finally got comfortable enough with them that I could actually run services in them that I trusted would work.
So
Yeah,
what's
I did.
fu-
Oh, go ahead.
no, I said what's funny is you're talking about your hardware, and yet the Raspberry Pi folk are running Mastodon on Raspberry Pis. Now I
Yeah.
don't know how many they're using. I'd be curious about that. I doubt it's just a single one.
Well, so that's the cool thing about Mastodon. When you stand it up, and you may not know this being just someone who's using someone else's instance, but when you start up Mastodon and run the first setup script, you can tell it, I want to run this in single user mode, which basically means you have your own little instance that runs your account, and it'll federate with all the other ones. All the local features, like the local timeline and stuff, won't have much in it because it's just you, but you can still interact with the rest of the network, which is really cool, I think, because that means you can kind of own your data and not have to worry about
This is-
other
Now-
users, being responsible
th-
for other users.
This is right up your alley, Mark. You need to get the domain getoff.mylon.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Now, one thing I do understand that is even if you're running an instance in single mode and a popular figure like starts following you or something, that can actually trigger a
Yeah.
sidekick job meltdown,
Oh,
even though they're
yes.
not on your instance because
Oh,
of the
yeah.
way data is shared. Like
Correct.
I followed George Takai either today or yesterday, and I'm kind of curious, Nate, if we've seen any impact of that on our instance because
So
I've interacted with him a few times.
the beauty of the fact that Mastodon is simply running in my basement and nobody pays me to run it is there's no monitoring. So I don't know.
Oh, if you went into the SAR data, I wondered what you'd say.
I didn't get paged or anything.
Okay.
No, I honestly I didn't. I used it a few times today though. I was busy with some meetings and stuff, and I didn't notice any issues. I followed George Takai yesterday as well, so I don't think there's been any issues on my instance.
Sweet. So Jerry, if it's not a trade secret, and I somehow don't think it is, how many users do you have currently, and how much breathing room do you think you have based on your Linux foo?
So there are 25,000 right now.
Yikes!
We're growing at about 1,000 a day,
My gosh,
which is crazy.
it is crazy.
I suspect based on based on the headroom on the Epic system, I probably can get up to close to 100,000. But what I want to do, because that Epic system is just brutally expensive. What I want to do is replace that with a couple of but probably 4 or 5 smaller of the 5950s running kind of this more horizontal scale out instead of just one big system. And by the way, that's a kind of a big problem right now, because if I want to patch Nginx, I got to take the whole freaking thing down.
But yeah,
Right.
if you could have a couple machines running Nginx, and then I suppose you'd want a load balancer or something in front of them, or some kind of DNS magic, so that it's if you took one down for an update, you could still be up and running.
Yeah, when I moved, I tried to do as much as I could without impacting people as they were moving over. One of my goals just that I set for myself was to try to give people a good landing spot, and because it's not Twitter, right? I mean, it is a different beast,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want people to also have their first impression of uh, Mastodon and the Fediverse be colored by the server being constantly unavailable and slow. So,
Yeah,
um,
because there was a lot of that happening in that same time
mhm.
period because a lot of people were, maybe they're unaware that the service they're switching to is in fact run by a bunch of basically hobbyists, right? I mean, I don't
Yes.
think there's such a thing as a professional Mastodon instance. Maybe there is.
Well, the main one, which is Mastodon.social, and then also Mastodon.online, is run by Mastodon GmbH, which is an entity that the I guess quote founder of Mastodon actually runs.
Okay.
That instance, by the way, has 900,000 users to give you an idea of how big it can scale.
Wow. Gotta wonder what they've got in the
So
back end.
so when you talk to people about Mastodon, let's pull the camera lens back a little bit, Jerry, because I'm interested in your perspective. When you talk to people about Mastodon, I think a lot of folk are thinking, oh, all these people ran over because of the garbage fire on E-Day, and so people think about it as it's a replacement for Twitter. Is it really a replacement for Twitter, or is it something different?
It is it's both. It is both, right? So it is not Twitter, right? It has some of the same features as Twitter, but there are some marked differences. For example, the search functionality is very very different in Mastodon and other Fediverse software, where you really can only search on things that you have interacted with, like that things that you follow, things that you've liked, and things that you've um, boosted, and things that you've posted. You can't search, the entire network for a particular term. So it has
This,
put a lot of focus on like hashtags, which are people are not necessarily used to having come from Twitter. The direct message system is very different, and
yes.
there's a lot of consternation about that. But I think some of that is actually a little unfounded. But there it is.
So searching got you in a little trouble recently, didn't it? Or at least your name ended up in a an article or two
Oh, you mean
with the
the password?
no the what there was a project that was on your instance that was building some sort of a
Oh
massive
yeah, yeah.
search
I
thing.
will. So I'll tell you over the. Well, let me just kind of level set, right? One of the cultural norms of the Fediverse is, privacy is a very deeply held construct. It is something that the software was really built up around. And so for instance, it doesn't you can't do what Twitter would have called a quote tweet. And the reason for that was it was seen as an enabler for abusive behavior. Again, you can't search. There were a lot of kind of intentional design points to help maintain privacy.
So
Um,
those are, in a sense, to put it in a nerd term, those are not bugs or missing options. Those are features.
they're design points. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
They're design points.
Okay.
The direct message thing, I think is more of a maturity curve
Yeah.
issue, but we'll put that to the side for a second. So, what had happened, that you were just talking about, is not the first time that's happened. It's probably like the third or fourth time. And so when it actually happened this time, like, oh geez, not again. So what happens is every now and then somebody joins my instance or some other instance, and they're smart people, and they see the missing search functionality, and they'll say, oh, like, this is an easy problem to solve, super easy problem to solve. I can ingest all this data and just create the basically a search engine. And that is, I guess what I'll say, wildly unpopular. And
Because you're
and
essentially, I guess the idea then is they're basically scraping the metaverse, or not the metaverse, the
correct.
Fediverse for information and storing it, which is kind
Correct.
of. I mean, it's kind of a privacy concern. These are public
Yeah, I
posts,
mean,
right?
so I will tell you, there are a lot of people who, a lot of, especially on the security side, who kind of look at the Fediverse and cock their head like a confused puppy and say, Wait a minute, it's not private, right? It is public information. It is not protected. Why is this such a big deal?"
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, again, it's a cultural norm. It absolutely is not, in general, it's not protected. You have the ability to limit who can see your posts, but you're absolutely correct. It is public, and it is effectively scraping. It's a little simpler than that because you can actually just ingest the protocol. Like you can have a cannon fed straight into your search database.
Crazy. I haven't looked a whole
So
lot into how ActivityPub works, which anybody who's watching or listening who doesn't understand what ActivityPub is, that's the protocol that these instances use to communicate with each other. So when one instance talks to another, it's using ActivityPub. And
right.
I presume there's more to it than that, but I don't know yet because I haven't really looked into how the
It
protocol works.
it looked like a big pub sub server. Like you publish data and other people are like sort of subscribing to it.
Yeah,
It
that's
just looked like
It's
a
a very extensible protocol. I mean, it's a super extensible protocol, and in fact, they keep adding new features to it. So
I was just gonna say
yeah.
let's talk about that just a little bit, right? So a lot of people are focused on Mastodon right now because
Mhm.
the Twitter exodus and all. I mean, obviously we're talking about it, right? So there's lots of people. I mean, you got interviewed by like Wired and somebody else about Mastodon, um, but there's more to ActivityPub and the Fediverse than just Mastodon. Mastodon's not the only service that's using, or the only, I guess, software that's using this protocol. There's also an Instagram
Correct.
clone. There's a YouTube
Yep.
clone.
Yep.
There's what was the other one? There's like a Twitch
There's a
clone.
it's a Twitch clone. There's a streaming music server,
Yep.
Funkwhale. There's Pixel Fed is the Instagram clone.
Right.
There's
There's a
I'm
Facebook
drawing a blank.
clone. What was that one? I
There's
tried that one
Write
out.
As or Write Freely is a like a blog, like a WordPress type thing. Um, yeah, and then there's also other alternatives that look and feel somewhat like Mastodon. Probably the most popular one is called Pleroma.
Okay.
Some people will say that that's a lot lighter weight, it's more server friendly, but it's one of those things where, like, I bought an iPhone back in 2008 and I still have an iPhone, so I set up Mastodon in 2017 and I still, there it is.
Right. So I had a thought. Now I don't remember what it was. You went on about the iPhone. I'm like, oh, where's he going?
I'm
And then
sorry.
it just left my
I'm
brain.
sorry.
I don't remember what it was I was going to say. All right. So yeah. So ActivityPub is a rather extensible protocol, right? Oh, that was the thing I was going to talk about. Mastodon has a limit on characters in your toots or posts in the same way that Twitter does, and I don't know why exactly they decided on exactly 500 characters. I don't know if it's because they liked the Twitter limit and they thought that was a good limit to have, because that was part of the charm of Twitter, was that you couldn't go on and write a novel,
Mhm.
right? But a lot of people complain about the length, right? But the cool thing is that ActivityPub isn't the thing that sets that limit, right?
Correct.
That's
It's the
why
front end.
Friendica, that was the one I was thinking of. Friendica is a Facebook clone. That'll let you post like novels the same way Facebook will, right? So obviously ActivityPub is capable.
Correct. Correct. And so on Infosec.exchange, I actually run a fork of Mastodon called Glitch, and so Glitch actually lets you override Mastodon's 500 character limit. And so the post limit on Infosec.exchange is 11,000 characters, and it got there um, a couple of years ago. I was having a bit of a war with Hackers.town, which is another security related site, and we were just kind of like one upping each other. And so I turned it up to 11,
It's like a rap battle, man.
And there
East
it
Coast
is.
rap wins.
You turned
There
it
it
up to
is.
11. That's funny.
Ours go to 11. Well, why not just make 10 the loudest? Blank stare at the camera. No, these go to 11.
That's right. All the way up to 11.
That's amazing. So I've been using Mastodon mostly via the web interface for about a week. Um, and so for those listening who haven't jumped in yet, who don't quite get what's some of the differences, it there's some interesting concepts that when you're doing a single server or appearing a single server social media are significantly different, right? You live on an instance and you have the concept of a home feed, and the only stuff you'll see there are things that people on your instance post or boost or hashtags that you yourself are following. And then there's the federated feed, which starts to show you, I forget what the exact rule set is, but essentially the federated feed is built out of if your Mastodon admin has set up any relays to other servers, as well as content that folk you're following might be following or boosting or whatever. But what I've noticed is that it sets up this nice little organic, self curated content, and it's a much more pleasant and less stressful social media experience than either the Facebook or the Bird site. And the Bird site is what a lot of folk on Mastodon call Twitter now. And
That is
but
an
that's
odd.
something.
That is an odd word. I don't know. Like, I understand where the word came from. I don't understand why though. Like, why do we not want to say Twitter?
I
Because
it is, to me, it seems like middle schoolish to be
it
candid.
I
But I
think
mean,
it's a mix. I think it's a mix of middle school, but there's also we talked about culture and stuff a little bit. There is a culture in Mastodon that I've noticed where people almost seem to try to go out of their way to respect not getting others upset. So the idea of
well,
using content warnings to not reveal your post automatically, the ideal of it's almost like a Voldemort thing, he who must not be named. I think it's an attempt to kind of to keep the temperature down a little bit. That's been my observation.
so you actually hit on a really important aspect of the of Mastodon and the Fediverse, is that it is, in addition to being very privacy sensitive, it's also very
Courteous.
I don't know how to say it, right? It's caring place,
It's
right? We
it's
try to respect each other.
it feels like it's courteous, right? So like
Yes.
when you're a kid, I mean, depending on who your parents were, your parents tell you to be kind to others, right? And that's the feeling I get, honestly. Like, this may sound hokey, but that's the feeling I get when I look through my Mastodon feed, right? Where if there's anything even like remotely sensitive, like even the slightest bit sensitive or inflammatory, it's censored, right? And unless it's either from someone who's new or maybe they just forgot and they didn't hit the button. But I've seen people censor pictures of their pets, which to me is
Yes.
weird. Like, why does that have to be censored, right? I don't do that,
People
but
will censor
Oh.
pictures of themselves, like looking into the camera. They'll censor pictures of food, and so
Some
there's a lot of there's a lot of nuance, I guess, is the way I'll say it.
yeah.
So I read a post specific. I read a post specifically because someone did ask why are you censoring pictures of your cat, and the person said, well, 2 years ago or something like that, I lost a cat who was very dear to me, and when I would see pictures of other people's cats on social media, it would make me upset. So I do it to be courteous to people who might have recently lost a pet.
Yeah.
Again, it's a cultural thing.
It makes
is.
sense. It makes sense. I mean, sometimes you have to wonder though, and I don't want to get like inflammatory simply by talking about being not
No,
inflammatory.
it's fine.
But sometimes you have to wonder where that line is, right? Like how
Is
far out of my way can I go to help not upset somebody else, right? But whatever. If you want to censor every post you make, then great.
yeah,
One of
and I think
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Jerry, you're the guest. I should let you talk. Go.
I was just going to say one of the things about Mastodon and the Fediverse in general is that each instance has its own set of rules,
Mm-hmm.
and so what might be acceptable on one instance, may not be acceptable on a different instance. And if the differences are too stark, then those instances might choose to not federate with each other.
This
But in
actually,
general,
sorry, go ahead. Finish your statement
in
first.
general, we find ways to work with each other. There are some that end up being pretty far out there and not participating.
And that's okay if it happens.
Yeah, so
And that's
when
okay.
when I first stood up my instance and I started learning about things like relays and block lists, first of all, the first thing that it reminded me of was back in my email administration days when I had to block all the IPs from China and I had to subscribe to remote block lists and whatever. And I do wonder how soon it'll be until we're there with with Mastodon, where it's like we have some agreed upon list of bad instances that we're all blocking. But
We're getting there already. I mean,
yeah,
to be candid, we're pretty much
so
there.
so what I did was I looked through because when you're a Mastodon admin, you can choose to publish your block list, right? And you do that,
Mhm.
Jerry. I went and looked and see what you had blocked to sort of get an idea for things that maybe I want to block preemptively, right? I noticed you had a lot of things in there. You can even add comments that say like, "This guy seems to spread hate speech. Maybe you want to block him, right? This one is all about porn, right? Whatever, right?" So I went through those and I blocked a number of those based on what you had blocked. And I also like some of them that either you didn't have comments or the comment was vague enough that I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to block them. I went and visited them and I could see what was publicly shared, and that also exposed me to some of the other, um, I guess, software that can be run, like you were talking
Mhm.
about that competitor to Mastodon, which was kind of
Laura,
interesting, right? Just to see other people that are running a different software stack. But anyway, that is powerful, right? So you chose to block this set of instances. I can choose to block all of them or some of them or none of them, right? Because that's my own
right.
choice, right? Which is pretty cool. But I said all that to say, uh, somebody reached out to me or someone responded to one of my posts on Mastodon, and they said the like worst case here, right? What if Elon decides to re-architect Twitter so that it can federate with Mastodon and ruins everybody's party? And my response was simply, we'd block him, right? And like that's the power. I think that's the power of
Yeah.
this architecture. And I think the
And,
person who
look,
posted this literally just didn't know that it was that simple.
we have had some hyper corrosive instances. There, most notably, one called Kiwi Farms, which was super in the news, and I don't think even a lot of people realized that was a Fediverse instance, and it was a really toxic place. But we have the tools to handle that.
Which I think is
And
great.
that's
Like I'm really happy that that was built into the way Mastodon was designed. Now I don't know if that's a core tenet of how ActivityPub works, or if that's something that everyone who builds an ActivityPub based software stack needs to accommodate.
I think it's a feature of all of them, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's great that it exists, right? Because we can pick and choose. And I guess you could even choose to not federate at all and run your own little isolated node, right?
Yeah,
So
the most recent version that came out this past Monday, 4.0, actually has it was a little more difficult to do previously, but now they actually add an explicit ability, either to do an allow list federation, where instead of like a block list, you have an allow list, and you can also set it up so that it's just an island, which is good.
So I was in a discussion last weekend with somebody who was frustrated because she wants some sort of, I'm going to call it universal block list or universal whitelist that means that she doesn't need to have her instance. Basically, the instance owner should not have to moderate, and there should be some sort of central server that is decided upon. These instances are terrible, and it could be because they have a political slant that she doesn't care for or whatever. And I actually pointed her to the whitelist feature in the documentation. She's like, no, that's not what I mean. I'm like, well, it sounded like what your use case was, but so it sounds like that for some people, there's this expectation that somebody else will come in or should step in and be like, these are the approved communities that Mastodon servers should follow. And these are communities that, regardless of your opinion, Mastodon should automatically block. And to me, that's someone who doesn't quite get it. To me, the network and the way that you build your communities will take care of that organically. I
Mhm.
don't, but I don't know. Is that a common struggle that comes up every so often? The idea that there should be some sort of central
There,
authority that says these are the people we should not allow in, even if we disagree with what they believe.
there's a lot, not just that, right? There's a whole lot of, well, gosh, it should do X. That is a common refrain. I will say that. And to be candid, there are some, kind of community driven block lists. The challenge with those is, of course, if you're not fully politically aligned with them, then you're not, you're gonna it's probably gonna rub you the wrong way. And so I think there's some peril in that. And you know look, I think one of the things that's going to be very interesting to watch, because we've had, I think, close to 2 million people joining the Fediverse since E-Day, as we'll call it.
I made a
It's
thing.
You made a thing. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what kinds of innovations start cropping up. Like, maybe that does become a thing. Um, one of the things that's kind of, it's a bit of a love hate is, as a result of the fact that the Fediverse is a bunch of independent sites. And for those who aren't aware, it's kind of like, looks like an email. Your account name looks like an email address. It's a username and a domain name. And what has happened, and what my instance struggled with this pretty mightily in the early days, was you had big names coming over, and sometimes it was really the person, and sometimes it really wasn't the person. It was somebody coming over trying to create an account named Brian Krebs, as an example, but that really wasn't him. And so that's actually happened quite a lot. And so there's some movement afoot to try to create like a central clearinghouse for who the actual Brian Krebses are in the Fediverse.
Yeah, I mean
So
this comes back to the problem that
And I tooted at you, Jerry.
this comes back to the problem with decentralized anything, right? So way back when the web was founded, right? The idea of decentralization was at its core, right? And all of the services that we all grew up using, email, DNS, web servers, like they were all decentralized. They weren't run by any one central forums, right? IRC, right? Like these things weren't moderated by one central authority, right? And it wasn't too much of a problem, except maybe with email, because email is a communication platform. Social media is a communication platform, right? So with a communication platform, you get the usual problems of trying to impersonate other people. I don't agree with with what that person said. Like this is a story as old as the first email ever sent, right? Flame wars are a thing that happen because misunderstandings happen and disagreements happen. With email, we ended up like it turned into eventually the reason everyone hands their email off to Microsoft and Google anymore is because it's a pain in the ass, right? Who should I block? Who's gonna phish my users next? Who's gonna impersonate somebody? Who's gonna say things that people disagree with? Right? These are all problems that we see with a decentralized model. So a lot of people started to flock to the centralized stuff like social media, but that didn't work out either. So there is no right answer here, I think is what I'm getting at. Like, there's no solution. The solution is that you have to have administrators that care about their users, care enough to maintain the infrastructure and to try to keep it safe for everybody.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you know what is it is one of the I think one of the reasons why there's a lot of people who feel like there should be more or less a max size for an instance. I don't know what that max size would be, but beyond a certain size, it becomes difficult to moderate and manage. But you have to kind of balance that by the more or the lower the cap you put on, that means you have to have more separate instances, which means you now have to keep track of you know you end up in the email problem, right? Now you end up having to have an RBL type system for the Fediverse, like we have for email. And I think over time, candidly, I think we're going to end up getting there. I don't know what it's going to look like. And maybe it's some similar to the way it's sprouted up in email, where you have both commercial and private or you public entities, I guess, like Spam House and others, trying to keep track of who is the abusive parties, who are the spammers. One of the things that's kind of ahead of us is we've had this inflationary period of growth, and like we have companies signing up on Infosec.exchange, like Rapid7. I just they signed up, and there's a bunch of security companies, and they're actually really well behaved. Like I have
I hope.
no concerns whatsoever. What concerns me is once you start having like the WPPs and the ad firms start saying, how can we
Yeah.
monetize this thing?
Yeah.
That's what starts to concern me, because I don't know what they're going to come up with. But all I can say is we'll deal with it as it comes.
Yeah, and I definitely, right, cuz email didn't start as a pain in the ass to administer, right? It was a neat technology that enabled people to communicate. And then people figured out that they could not just sell things through email, but they could scam people through email. And they latched onto it, right? So that happened with social media. It happened with forums. It happened with the
Dude.
comments in YouTube videos. It happened with Discord, right? Like I get spammed on every communication platform that I'm on. Not Mastodon yet. It'll come.
So I remember the day that the World Wide Web stood together, and this was in the 90s, and like actively mocked people who tried to use the web for commercial purposes. And that changed pretty quickly,
Yeah.
almost overnight.
Somebody was crazy and started selling books online. I remember that.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, that was what, and then it was the war against pop-up ads.
God.
It's always some it's human, right? Humans
Yeah.
are always going to try and figure out how can I make a buck from this.
Well, where are the people? Wherever the people are is where the advertisements are going to show up, right? And that's
I wanna
for good or
be
bad.
where the people are.
There, I did it. I
There you
triggered
go.
him.
You did it. You triggered. I think-
Exactly right.
But I think, one of the good things is that those of us who run our own instances, we can say, no, I will not, I'm not going to take advertising. And instances that want to take advertising, well, I've got to be honest. If I start seeing boosts, like there's been a couple of boosts that have made it to my local feed where I'm like, this almost feels like an ad. And I either unfollow or block at that point.
And there's a point where like you almost need to worry about that. Like I was hesitant to share the link to tonight's show on Mastodon because in the back of my head I'm like, people don't want to see ads here. Do I want to be that guy that erodes that line? Right? Now, sharing my own podcast may not feel like an ad, but let's be honest. This show costs money, and we have Patreon, and we make money from it, or I make money to run the show. Is it an ad or not? I don't know.
I boosted it, so implicitly
It's your fault now too.
permitted. Yeah.
I think
Look,
I would
whenever.
argue against, because you can consume this content without paying a dime.
Good
Well,
point.
that's true,
Good
and
point.
it's useful too. I mean, I think it's
Well,
created. Hopefully, it's useful. We'll see.
Arguably.
it's
Um,
something.
But I will tell you, it is, I one of the first issues, other than the technical growth problem that I had, was moderation. Like we did have, wasn't so much spam, but there was just a lot of nonsense. Lot of pornography, a lot of like hate speech, a lot of just kind of the same types of stuff. Bad actors, I think, probably also coming over with the good actors. I actually had to recruit a moderation team, who, by the way, is phenomenal. Like, I pretty much owe my life at this point to these people. They are absolutely amazing. But it is that very thing that you just described that they're kind of charged with having to figure out: is a post about the Iron Sysadmin podcast an ad, or is it not? And
Right.
so it that there's no black and white bright line answer to those kinds of questions.
Like many things
I'm
in life, right? There's shades of gray we dance in.
I'm
Mhm.
I'm, I'm curious to see how quickly this is going to change, though. How quickly the the norms that were on Mastodon last month,
Yeah.
prior to the utter meltdown of Twitter, and how long it's going to last until those things change. Now, I don't expect that they're suddenly going to have retweets or retweets or whatever the hell we're calling it now, and they're going to add all these search features and everything else. But with the massive influx of people, moderation is going to be interesting, very interesting, because they're coming from a world where and I'm just as guilty of it. Like, I haven't used the content warning stuff at all. Now, I don't think I've said anything super trigger worthy, but it doesn't even begin. That's not even something I think about, because
I,
I throw it out there, and if people don't want to see it, you shouldn't be following me.
Yeah,
I use
so
it.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I've
No,
used
no.
it primarily for when I talk about games or things like Andor, when it's like a mild spoiler. And I'll put in the title mild spoiler and/or mild spoiler gameplay, because I don't like being spoiled myself. Right?
Sure, and I think that's a perfectly valid reason, and that's something that I might do too. It's kind of like, well, now I can throw that stuff out there, and people will at least have a half a warning about it. But if I'm talking about responding to somebody about politics, or talking about politics, or whatever, like, the idea that I'm have to pre-censor myself before I do anything, after having been on other platforms where it's simply not a thing. It's just and I know it can bother some people, but like, the reason that was on Twitter and not on something like Facebook and others is that Twitter for me was very one-sided. You can choose to follow me, and if you don't want to, okay, great, but I'm not going to censor myself for what something that you don't like.
Mhm. So
And Mastodon feels like the same way, except that I'm a little concerned now that if I don't start thinking that way, Jerry might boot me.
Well,
uh,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I will tell you, right, there is shades of gray for the most part. If you act, I mean, I think most instances are like this. If you're acting rationally, and you're not being a hateful jerk, and like I have actually had to respond, you're not talking about illegal things, you're not doing illegal things, and otherwise harassing people. My view is, people are free to block you, right? If they don't like what you're saying, block you. But like, if there is a line that you can cross, where that's just not the kind of thing I want on the instance, right? I don't want people making off color humor, or basically being intolerant of people. I like to say um, we are intolerant of intolerance, and that's just the way, just something that I feel deeply about. And if somebody doesn't like that, then there are other instances out there.
Or they can stand up their own.
They can stand up their own. Yeah, I agree. I like being treated like an adult. Like,
Right.
look, if you don't like something on your instance, like, let's have a conversation about it. I don't
Right.
think I'm a person that's gonna, honestly don't think that you and I will ever be talking about that, because it's simply not the content that I would put out there anyway.
I don't
But
know, Jason. I just learned that your neighbor hates you.
yeah, apparently my neighbor hates me, which was
So
news to me, because I don't even know who the guy is. But whatever. Um, but the idea of, because I've seen a couple things mentioned, and you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about, Jerry. But I saw a couple things mentioned today of somebody getting booted off one of the servers for God knows what. But you know this is somebody that I follow, that I've looked, and I think I've seen most of what's been posted, and it's like, okay, what's the big deal? So it just feels like there's some of these are arbitrary, like, if the moderators or owner of the server or whatever doesn't happen to like what you have, you're going to get booted out, and then you're going to have to move somewhere else and kind of start over. And that avenue of it is just kind of that's a little
So
scary to think about that.
two comments I have on that. One is hopefully an instance admin that wants you off their server will give you the chance to migrate your data, which is a thing that's actually very easy to do on Mastodon. You can move to a new instance pretty easily. In fact, a mutual friend of ours, Jason, was on one instance, and someone else he knew stood up a new one, and he wanted to move to it, and he did. And he went through that, and he shared some of the
So
the context about it with me, and he said it was actually a really simple process. But the other thing I wanted to mention was that if you are unwelcome on an instance, you can either move to another one or you can stand up your own. Right? That's the beauty of this kind of an infrastructure.
yeah, no, I get that. I'm just, I knew you could move from instance to instance, but in my mind, that's sure I can move I move. But I don't even know what's moved. Like, my guess would be, like, just the people that I'm following. But does it update? Will it update people who are following me with the new handle?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's
When
not
so
incredibly horrible.
what happened on my side of the interaction when he moved his account was I got a notice that he refollowed me, which was basically Mastodon saying a new account with the same person's name was now following me. So I knew that he moved, but he said all the people he was following came right along with him, right? So there was no, like, he didn't have to go refollow everybody. They just got kind of a notice that this guy moved.
Oh, that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, it's not so bad. One of the things we are trying to do, again, because we have quite a few people on the server, and nothing will cause drama faster than unclear rules and inconsistent application of rules. And so what we're trying to do, and again, this is like, I full credit to the moderation team. They are just absolutely on top of this. They are trying very hard, and I think I know the situation you're talking about. They're trying very hard to create a somewhat objective map of the different types of things that would need to be under a content warning, things that might would get you a warning or get you limited or suspended or what have you, and putting that out for comment. I don't think we're not trying to be unreasonable, but at the same time, like, we have 25,000 people and nobody wants to see a dick pic fly by, right?
Most people
so
don't. I'd agree.
there are some instances that want as many of those as they can get, and God
Well, I
bless
mean,
them.
there are, and look, and that's the great thing about the Fediverse. Go find that, and
Grinder.social, right? But yeah. Um One of our listeners asked a question, and I want to read it out because it's a great question. Josh said, "Hey, when you aren't paying for something, you are the product. That being said, and this is to you, Jerry, are you taking donations to help host or offset the cost for the instance?"
the answer is yes. I have I have two right now I have two donation methods. One for one time, I take PayPal to Jerry at Infosec.exchange. And then the other recurring donation is on LibraPay, and I'm not even going to try to remember with a link to that. It's pinned in my
So it's okay. I
Infosec.exchange.
put the link in the notes already.
Yep, it'll be in the
Oh,
show notes.
I wasn't aware of the PayPal one, but the LibraPay is in the notes.
awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. And it's been quite interesting because a lot of people are paying what they would have paid for a the
Blue check
verification
mark.
icon on Twitter.
That's actually kind of ironic, right?
So-
that they would choose to pay the $8 when they would not pay them on Twitter.
So pro tip for LibraPay. LibraPay it just kind of passes everything through, so you end up paying the fees along with it. So if you send $10 to Jerry, he doesn't get $10. He gets $10 minus whatever fees are
Yeah, it's
necessary
not
for the
terrible,
method
yes.
that you pay. So if you bump it up a little bit, you can pay for those fees, and Jerry still gets $10.
Yeah, but to be honest, Patreon does the same thing, right? And
They'll do.
Patreon's very
They'll-
kind to say Iron System and Podcast makes, I don't know, $100 a month, when really what
Yeah.
I'm seeing in my account is like 70 something. Right? So
Yeah, I don't know what the fees are though. There's some pretty scary language about how incredibly high the fees are if you do like monthly versus paying yearly. So I still haven't quite figured it all out.
Yikes.
I'll have to look at that. I don't know offhand what they are. I tried to.
So-
I picked LibraPay because they seemed like the least expensive at the time, at least.
So I'm going to ask the question, and Jerry, you can tell me pound sand. I'm not sharing this information, but I'm going to ask.
Okay.
Ballpark, what's it costing you monthly to run InfoSec right now?
So
And again,
I,
if you're not comfortable sharing it, that's fine.
No. I'm actually quite transparent about it. I posted a little joke yesterday with Bart Simpson writing, "My wife is going to kill me when she opens the credit card bill," and so this next credit card bill from Hetzner will be a little over $2,000. So
that's
which is
considerable,
fairly-
And that's for a single month.
that'll be for a single month, but about 500 of that is one-time setup fees.
like the spin up fees of
I
those
had
new
to, I had to
instances.
slam some stuff in fast.
So Hetzner, now I don't want to turn this into an ad
That's,
for your colo
That's
place, but
8 cents per user if everybody running
But-
on it donates to you.
are they like a colo? Is that what I understand? They're basically like a colo that'll run a physical machine for you instead of a cloud provider. Is that the
So they are they're both a cloud provider, a colo, and they do dedicated hardware. And so I'm using their dedicated hardware. So they're providing the bare metal systems.
okay?
I did early on. I did try some of the cloud systems, and at least when I was running it on one individual system, I found that the I/O performance was just not there, which
Oof.
is what kept me going back to the bare metal.
Yeah. Listen, if you want to hear me rant about terrible performance on servers you're renting from Amazon, go ahead and listen to our last podcast.
Yeah, we've been on sort of a series about cloud, and there's been a couple where Mark has gone off about I/O and CPUs getting stolen out from under him and things like that. CPU cycles, I should say.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure there's more cost efficient ways, but like anything in IT, it's more of a trade craft than a science.
Yeah, there's always a trade-off, right? So my instance is running, like I mentioned earlier, on a VM on a machine in my basement. That machine has the convenience of not costing me monthly other than the power and cooling, but it's in my basement, which means it's noisier for my home. I need space to put it in. It costs me on my electric bill. And if something breaks, I have to walk to my basement and repair it, right? Whereas if I'm on a cloud provider or a colo, I just call them up and go, hey, there's a hard drive failing. I just got an alert. Can you guys swap it out, right? Everything is either a time or money investment is really what I'm getting at, I think. Also, that machine in my basement wasn't free, and it's also 10 years old, right? So anyone who's on my instance, you're running on 10-year-old hardware. Sorry. I put that in my server description, by the way. So anybody
So,
signing up on mine, they
consider us
know.
warned.
Yeah,
Consider
yeah.
us warned.
So
So, I have another question I want to ask Jerry.
Sure.
Are we, in your opinion, is this a flash in the pan? Like everybody's making a big deal of how quickly Mastodon is growing. Uh, but have we reached a critical mass? Or are people going to get bored and be like, yeah, I tried that Mastodon and I downloaded it on my phone and the app was crap, or it was really too, I couldn't find Aunt Bertha's pictures and there really weren't enough cat memes, like, so do you think there's going to be a user drop off? Like, what do you think?
A user drop off is almost inevitable. I mean, when you
Much like
scroll,
Thanos.
yeah, when you scroll through the timeline, there's a lot of people, complaining about different things. A lot of people, by the way, I think their experience with Mastodon and the Fediverse is colored by the fact that they're using a mobile app, and a lot of the mobile apps are just not very good as compared to the web app. And I like I've been on this thing for 5 years, and I've tried every one of the mobile apps like a bunch of times over, and I keep coming back to the web interface. Even on my phone, it's just way better experience. But having said that, so I'm of two minds. On the one hand, the network effect is in full effect, right? There are a lot of people talking. Like, you don't have to go anywhere else to interact with super smart people. If you post something, you're probably, no matter how, you know trivial, you're probably going to get a like, or follow, or a comment. There's just that much of a buzz. So it has a bit of its own gravity now. But at the same time, it is a bit of a novelty. I think, we will see some number of people leave. I don't know, in a year from now, is the user count going to be down to 20,000, or is it down to 5,000? I don't, or 500. I Maybe it's 50,000. I don't really know exactly where it's going. I do think that, you know as a community, we have to start putting more, like, I have super generous people donating to support my instance, and I am so thankful for them, and I'm super happy with all the people who are on the instance, and like, I'm incredibly impressed by the people who are there. But we have to remember, like, we're using open source software, and that open source software is dependent on, people donating the time and money to make it better. And so I've actually taken some of the money that I've got, because, I mean, I'm a CISO and I make fairly decent money. So I have actually continued to increase the amount of money I'm contributing to, um, the Mastodon Foundation. It's probably not the right word, but the organization that funds the development of the open source project, because that's where I think we're gonna, if it's gonna have legs, it's gonna require more investment. It's gonna require improving things like the direct message, privacy, and other things. So, like, there's it's a great platform already, but there's certainly opportunity for improvement. And it's like, it's on us, right? We are them.
yeah, and that's both the power and the drawback of both decentralized and open source software, is that you get all the power and freedom, but that power and freedom comes with a bit of expense, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
convenience or like actual money, right? Or time, right? Just like I said, right? If something's wrong with my instance, I need to go fix it. I can't just wait for the Twitter engineers or the Facebook people to bring the service back, right?
I
I am the guy, right?
There's no Twitter engineers left.
I am the law.
Good point.
So,
There's
funny
no.
funny story. Funny story. Was it last night or the night before last, when Artemis launched? Was Artemis launched at 1:30 a.m., 1:45 ish a.m. Eastern time, and I have terrible insomnia, and I was tossing and turning, and I looked at my phone, and it was like 1:30, and so I knew that it was about to launch, so I opened up the NASA TV app and I just started watching it, and I started getting pings. Your Mastodon instance is down. And so, yeah, all right, I got to get up. And so that was actually the end of my night's sleep. I got up and I watched the launch while I was fixing. There were 9,000 concurrent users because apparently everybody and their dog was awake watching the Artemis launch. There were 9,000. The most I had ever seen before was about 4,000 concurrent users, and I had set the limit to be 8,000, and obviously that didn't work so well.
Yeah, I've had none of
And
those
there's no
issues
Twitter
yet because
engineer.
I don't have enough
Oh.
users yet, right? But and to be honest, as much as I want to see this all succeed, I hope I never have that problem because I don't want I don't want my instance to turn into a part-time job.
Well, I've had some people on the Facebook asking me for accounts. I've added a few.
Yeah,
over the
and
past
you know,
couple of days.
folks that we know, and in fact, even folks listening to the show, if like you're really dying to get on Mastodon and you want to join my instance, I'm not going to turn you away, but just know that it's a hobby, and same deal for Jerry, right? This is a hobby, right? So if it's down in the middle of the night, maybe don't wake him up. He has enough trouble sleeping anyway.
I based on news that I'm kind of watching real time, Jerry, you might not get any sleep tonight because I think things are going south very quickly on the old site, and you may get an influx of new people again.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I've got
Birdsite?
I've
Oh,
got an article or two in our news that we'll talk about later on that just like I have a real bad feeling about poor old Twitter.
Yeah. I don't know. Like it just, I guess things didn't go the way that Elon thought they were going to go today.
Surprise.
And
Surprise.
as a result, the Twitter campus is locked down until Monday. Like nobody gets access to the buildings or something because
Oh my
there's
gosh.
rumors or there's a fear of insider threat because of the hundreds of people that have left today.
Yeah, so
Okay.
So
and
it should
like-
be interesting.
like I don't want to
I mean,
spread.
look,
Sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of people who are disgruntled and both inside and outside, but man, there's some things that are just not okay.
Yeah, I don't want to spread like hyperbole here, but I saw earlier today, it might have been on Mastodon, someone shared an email that was supposedly from Elon to Twitter's staff about basically like if you're not on board with the new direction, GTFO. Here's your severance.
Oh yeah,
And-
that's
That would- I
totally
did see that
totally
too, yeah.
legit.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of like, how many people you think are going to just take that and run? Right? Like 3 months pay? And, 3 months to find a new job? Given the way things are going, that might be a better option. So maybe that's got something to do with it, Jason.
Oh yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying. And the rumors are, which are pretty solid at this point, that a number of extremely important teams as a whole left, and they're like they're basically like the Twitter can't really run without these guys type teams. So there's apparently a mad scramble to try to keep people and offer them incentives, and the rumor mill's all over the place. But I'm seeing a lot of pretty much universal across my entire feed right now is a lot of people saying this sucks. I hope it doesn't go away, but if it does, it's been fun. Goodbye. So that it's very, very down at the moment.
Kind
That's
of like
unfortunate.
there was a while back, there was an MMO that was shutting down. I remember watching a video where that people had recorded the last few moments of the servers being up before they shut them down, and there was a lot of that going on. Like, oh, this has been great. Goodbye, everybody. Whatever. That's kind of what that feels like, the way you're describing, right? So, all right. So we've been going at this for a little over an hour. I think we've covered everything I wanted to talk about and a lot of other things, right? So I guess one last round. Anybody have anything else they want to either ask Jerry or just like comments about Mastodon in general before we go to the break? Or do we have any questions in chat that haven't been answered?
Given your experience thus far running your own instance, would you recommend this to anybody else?
It is exciting. I will tell you, if you're going to run a smallish instance, it's fine. Like it's fun, it's fine. But if you are going to try to do something larger, it's an investment in time and money. No,
It's
no doubt about it.
exciting and new. It's like being on the Love Boat. Get
It is.
Yeah.
aboard.
So I
Yeah,
mean
part of
the
me wants to
Exactly like
part
love.
yeah. Part of me wants to stand my own up, but I also want to support Nate as a user. So I'm torn right now.
so the I've done the self-hosted community stuff. It's a thing I enjoy. I've done it for years. It's part of why I run this podcast. I used to run a BBS back in the days, right? So like this is nothing new to me. This is something I enjoy. However, when it starts to become a part-time job is when it becomes a problem. And Jerry, you're there. I like you're solidly there, right? That's like at this point it's a judgment call on your point. But I don't know if I would want to be in the $2,000 a month range for a hobby. But I guess if you're getting
Yeah,
donations that cover that, like that might be fine, right?
yeah, that's the thing. I have to figure out the whole life balance, but for now, I'm able to cover the bills.
Eastern PA, I hope my little song about the Love Boat cheered you up a little bit and cured some of the bashing. Cool. To me, I get such a Usenet slash forum slash early internet community feel. The stuff that
Yeah.
people complain about, the lack of being able to find anybody on the planet, the lack of smaller people being crushed by celebrities. To me, that's a feature with Mastodon that I've really embraced. And I'm at the
100%.
point a week in where I've actually got enough stuff flying by on my feeds that I feel like I probably can slow down a little bit on trying to find stuff to follow. It's almost running too fast for me to consume. And I think that's a good place to be if you're doing social media, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, I
Absolutely.
mean, if and it's like
And none of it stresses me out.
it's the this has always been the balance with new services, right? We don't have the huge influx of users yet. Now, I know Jerry, you may have a differing opinion there based on how many users you've seen join your instance, but we don't have the millions of people that the larger social networks have yet, and I don't know if we ever
Exactly.
will. But when you do, along with it comes the drama, and along with it comes the people who want to advertise, and along with it comes just like all the things that make social media bad today. So I do wonder if like are we going to get to that point at some point, and is Mastodon just going to be the next thing we're all trying to leave in 10 years? I hope not.
Uh, you know,
Like
I hope we'll see. I hope not. I don't think it's ever going to have a billion users. Just to be super clear, right?
yeah,
Do we want it to?
I
right,
don't. No, I don't think so.
right.
I think the tools are in place for people to build their own communities of people of like minds. And see, that's the thing. I'm not a sociologist, but I've read things where and I'm starting to really believe this based on the other groups I move in. Smaller groups of humans are the ideal. A
Mm.
dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen. Once you start to get beyond that, other people start to become more background noise.
Yeah.
So smaller communities that you can reach out and interconnect with other smaller communities, that feels right to me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you, Jerry, for joining the show tonight. And I don't know if you've decided whether you're going to stick around for the second half or not. It's entirely up to you. We can discuss that during the break. But if you want to share either how people can find you on Mastodon or any other social network or anything else you're involved in, like your own podcast, feel free to do that right now.
Sure. My podcast, which hopefully will be making another revival, is defensivesecurity.org, or you can find it anywhere podcasts are played. You can find me on Mastodon my handle is at Jerry at Infosec.exchange if you are looking for a home on the Fediverse, you are very welcome to join Infosec.exchange. We have plenty of room despite the rumors. We have a home for you if you're looking for one. So
All right.
I by the way, I super appreciate being here. This was a great time. Thank you.
Yeah, I got to say, when I read the Wired article that featured you and I saw you only got like 2 sentences, I'm like, we can do better than that.
It's like an hour-long interview.
Yeah, and they had like one quote from you. I'm like, this is disappointing.
I can tell you the inside of the Crimson Fedora, where Nate and I both work. There's been talk of Mastodon stuff. I'm going to share this with our fellow nerds on our company-wide mailing list once Nate has it all cleaned up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to get shared. I was going to promote the show there, but again, I get the same feeling when I go to promote stuff internally as I do when I share them on Mastodon.
I should have just done it, huh?
You should have. You're our promotions guy, Mark. That's all there is to it.
We had our CTO on here. We scored.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
We had Chris Wright on here. Not only did we have Chris Wright on here, but I won my personal challenge of having him not talk about the edge. Instead, he talked about debugging early virtualization code, stepping through machine language in his basement. It was awesome.
And cycling in Boston.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, good stuff. Anyway, all right, so this has been great. We are going to go to a break, folks. Remember, the show will be split into 2 parts. This is part A. If you want to listen to us banter about stuff and talk about the news, that'll be in part B. If you don't tune in for part B, then I feel obligated to say that if you want to support the show, you should do so via Patreon or find our Teespring shop where you can buy shirts and stuff. Patreon.com/IronSysadmin. You can find the show anywhere you find podcasts. If you can't find us, let us know. We'll add it because we want to be everywhere. And I think that's probably it. Oh, YouTube. Find us on YouTube and Twitch if you want to watch this thing live. And yeah, I think we're going to go to break. Any final words from anybody before I switch scenes? No? Okay, fine then. All right, folks. We'll see you in a few minutes. Yeah, we'll see you after the break. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysAdmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysAdmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you. All right, folks, we're back. I mean, I know a lot of you were probably here to listen to Jerry talk and not us, but those of you that stayed, thank
But
you.
apparently, one of these two ate him, so he's gone.
What? Are you saying we ate him? We didn't eat him. He had to take his
I
dog
didn't
for a
eat him.
walk.
Okay.
Anyway, we're back.
That's less creepy.
That is much less creepy. So we're back and we're ready to talk about the usual stuff that we talk about. The first thing we're going to talk
Bruno?
about. No, we don't talk about Bruno. Not on this show.
No. Good.
Right. We're going to talk about our awesome folks who help make this show possible by donating money to the show through Patreon. Folks, thank you for being patrons. I want to give you a quick update on the total since July that will be going to the American Cancer Society at the end of the year. We're up to almost $300, $297.66. That's exactly what is sitting in the account right now that Patreon goes into. We should have 2 more payouts between now and when I intend to send the money. So we should be a little over, we might be close to 400 by then. We should be,
Sweet.
pretty close to there. So that'd be pretty cool. Not a huge sum of money, but you know what? Whatever we can give, right? We're gonna give what we can. So we're gonna give a quick call out to all of our patrons. Thank you very much to Name Pending 197, Jeremy, Aranami, Andrew, Tatro, Bruce, Robert, David, Solemn, Linux Sys 666, Mark with a K, The Mentor, Mark with a C, Julius, Andy, Jay, and Charles. Thank you all for being patrons, and we appreciate anything you want to send to the show to help us keep the lights on.
And I appreciate Linux 66666, his lovely handle. He's been interacting with us on Mastodon, which is nice.
Yep. Yeah, he's on Mastodon. There's a couple other listeners I think that I've connected with through Mastodon. So, folks, if you're not there, I don't have an Iron Sysadmin podcast account set up on Mastodon because I've just been sharing it through my own account, which is gangriff@social.underground.org. I'll put a link to it in the notes because I spell underground in the same way that I spell it for my normal website where there's no E. That's got a story behind it that I'm not going to go into right now. Yeah, so if you want to follow me there, Mark, you've got a handle there. Jason's got a handle there. Jason's not on my instance, though. I guess I'm not good enough for him. He's on Jerry's instance. Turf war.
But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. That's right. You can still talk to
because
him.
it's federated.
It's federated. So yeah, if you're on Mastodon or if you want to be on Mastodon, let me know. I can. You can sign up on my instance if you want to. It'll just require approval. Or if you reach out to either me or Mark first, we can send you an invite. Then you'll be pre-approved. So just.
I'm sorry, guys. Jerry's got sexy epic processors. I just couldn't resist.
He does. He does. Mine's
Hey,
a
gotta do you,
10-year-old. Mine's a 10-year-old HP ProLiant that had bad memory when I got it that I had to replace. So yeah, I don't blame you. You want to go on the sexy new hardware? Go ahead. Fine. I'm fine. I'm not at all insulted. Not even a little bit.
May be simple, but it's honest work, says Nate's Mastodon server, and you all know the GIF I'm talking about.
All right. So yeah, if you want to support the show, do so via patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can do it via buying shirts. Yes, t-shirts and some other things on Teespring, teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And with that out of the way, we're going to talk about the lack of reviews that we have again this month. We have no new reviews. Makes me sad. Maybe I'll have to start some gimmick like some other shows do, like have my dog read them or something. Then we'll get some more reviews. Wouldn't that be awesome? Have the dog read the Patreon reviews? Or not Patreon, podcast reviews? No? Fine, whatever. Whatever. All right, and now we're already to the part of the show where we have our usual random banter, which will probably last too long. We'll lose all the viewers, and no one will listen to the news.
We've already lost most of the viewers, so you know.
No, there's totally a whole bunch. There's like 4 on YouTube.
Our normal number of viewers.
Yeah,
and
we got
some
our
of those
nor-
might be us.
Jerry brought a few with us, which was pretty cool. So I hope you guys, those of you that came and checked it out, enjoyed the show. All right, so let's see, chat. I've already kind of talked about this, but I've got a Mastodon instance up and running. I'll put a link to it in the notes. In fact, I'm like typing it right now. It's been a lot of fun, but we've really already talked a whole bunch about Mastodon today, so I don't know if I really want to go too deep into this. I'll type it after someone else is talking. I can't type and talk at the same time. I'm single-threaded, guys. I'm sorry. So I'll put that into the notes, not only the address for the instance, but how you can reach me there. And Mark, if you want to do the same thing for you, that's entirely up to you.
What am I doing?
Put a link to your Mastodon profile if you want people to follow you. It's up to you.
That's fine. I could do that.
But yeah, it's been interesting. I wrote. So as I mentioned while we were talking to Jerry, I stood up Mastodon in containers. However, I did it slightly differently than the instructions say. The instructions basically have you use Docker Compose, which of course depends on Docker. Now, being who I am, I never do anything the easy way. Like I could have just joined someone else's Mastodon instance and done it that way. I also could have just used Docker or whatever and done it the documented way, but I didn't. I used Podman on Rel, which meant I had to change some things slightly to make it work. Now, there are ways to run Docker Compose with Podman, but I honestly, I never really found the results of doing so to be quite satisfactory. So instead, I wrote up essentially like a stripped down Kubernetes Helm chart, which you can then import into Podman. So that's the way I did it. So I can like repeatedly deploy it or update it. So I wrote it all up. It's in a blog. It's in the notes for today's show if anybody's curious about how that's set up and how it works. If you want to also do it in Podman. I had a number of folks on Mastodon tell me they'd love to see how I did it, so that's why I wrote that up. So that's out there on my own blog. It sounds like we may end up working with the folks at Enable Sysadmin to put it there as well, because they're also very interested in this trend that is Mastodon, which I found pretty cool. I also put a link to an article that is on Enable Sysadmin about just basically about life on Mastodon, right? So there's some interesting stuff in there. I put those both in the first part of the show's show notes where we talked to Jerry because they were Mastodon related. So if you want to go find those, look for part A. You should go listen to part A anyway because it was a whole lot of fun. Jerry was a great guest.
It was good stuff.
It was a great guest. Right.
Indeed.
So that's as much about Mastodon I'm going to say until we get to the news, because I'm sure there's going to be more about Mastodon there. Let's see what else. The only other things I have going on, I guess the only other real big thing I wanted to mention is that I am once again going to be in the cesspit of villainy that is Las Vegas for AWS reInvent 2 weeks from now, the week after Thanksgiving. I'm going to be out there with Red Hat. I'm going to be in the booth, the Red Hat booth. And I'm probably also be milling around a bit. Yeah, I'm going to bring a bikini. Yeah, that's probably not acceptable. Not even for the booth babes. that's not popular anymore now, right? That's like not okay. Anyway. But yeah,
in Vegas maybe.
In Vegas it might be. Yeah. I mean, people
you'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy, all that stuff.
Yes. Yeah, Vegas is just not my favorite place in the world, but I think it'll be an interesting experience to be on the vendor side of a conference for a change. So we'll see how it goes.
So were it not Vegas, you probably wouldn't be a Red Hatter. Because that was Vegas. The first time you and I.
Oh yeah,
that's the first time I really got to know you, and it got me thinking this guy could be a pretty good Red Hatter, and your contributions at the panel that you were observing is what when we had someone drop out, I'm like, let's have Nate join the summit panel.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
As much as I. Like, there are very few fond memories that I have of the reInvent that I went to in 2018. However, all of the stuff that involved Red Hat and the accelerators were fond memories, right? So I hated going to Vegas. I hated going through the airport. I hated flying. Hated's a strong word. I disliked the people I was at reInvent with from my previous employer. Sorry if any of you are listening, but I mean, it's obvious I don't work there anymore. I didn't really like, anyway. But the opportunities I got from that panel, the trip to the National Nuclear Museum or whatever it's called,
Atomic History Museum
that you took the accelerators on, Mark, that was awesome. Some of the interactions I had with folks from Red Hat at reInvent, which is ironic because it's not a Red Hat conference, was just awesome, right?
Yeah.
And you're right, it put things in motion that got me to Red Hat. So those things I don't regret at all. But yeah, Vegas is just not my speed. It's not my thing. I just don't like it. I don't like the I don't like the place. So anyway, that'll be a thing. If any of you are going to be at reInvent, reach out. We can say hi. Maybe we can get a drink or something. I don't know. I imagine someone listening to our show is probably going to be at reInvent. But yeah, reach out. I'd be happy to meet you guys. So other than that, it's I have one of my cars is broken. $3,600 freaking bill, which sucks. So if anybody has a rich uncle that wants to send me $3,600, that'd be awesome. And I'm going to be off next week for Thanksgiving, which is the first time since I joined Red Hat that I can take off without having to worry about someone else covering for my accounts. Sorry, that's like inside baseball stuff that most of you probably don't care about, but that was one of the things that was a little frustrating.
Nate doesn't have to find somebody to cover his shifts.
Yeah, that's basically what it comes down to.
I have a rich uncle, but he won't send me money, so I don't think he's going to send you money either.
Well, maybe he'll send me money. Maybe he just doesn't like you. Yeah.
It's possible.
All right. Yeah, I think I covered my chat section pretty quickly. Mark, it's your turn.
Hey, so I threw my Mastodon address next to my name on the notes, which, hey, use that if you wanna. So I've actually had such a pleasant time on Mastodon over the past week that I ended up nuking Facebook off of my phone right before the podcast because I made the mistake of engaging with an idiot on a post Nate made.
Yeah.
And it just made my blood pressure hit the roof. I'm like, why am I doing this to myself?
I shouldn't have shared that. Yeah. Anyway,
No, it wasn't your fault. It was her. She was a jackass.
I know who you're talking about, and it's a shame because she's a great person. I've met her in person.
No, not if she believes what she wrote. She's not a great person.
Well,
sorry, man.
When you remove politics from the equation, there's lots of people that you can get along with a lot better, and that's just a shame. Anyway,
that might be true, but people have spent 2.5 years showing us who they really are. Some of them, and no, some of them are not nice people. Some of them are not great people.
Yeah.
Some of them are need a kick in the ass. Anyway, so Facebook no longer on my phone. I don't know if and when it's going back on it because Mastodon doesn't make me rage. But let's talk about something that makes me really happy, and that is this guy right here, the Steam Deck. Let's see, is it in camera?
Yeah. It is.
This thing has been like, I now do like 90, I'm going to say 90 to 95% of my gaming on this bad boy, with the occasional foray onto the PS5. And then if I want to do something in VR, I use the gaming rig. But if it's, what do you got there?
Is that the dock?
It's the Steam Dock.
Sweet. How is it?
It works exactly how you would expect it to work.
Which is saying something in today's world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plug it in. It updated like firmware or something. I think there's firmware on the dock itself, but it had to do a quick update and then off it went. It worked great.
I have a USB-C dock I've been completely happy with, but if that should die one day, I'll probably grab an official dock. Or if I want a second docking station somewhere in my house because I'm bougie like that, I'll get one of the official ones. Yeah, sweet.
Did you buy the one you have before the Steam Dock was out or before it was available?
Yes, because I wanted to be able to dock the deck. I have the big ass TV in the other room. That's what, when we played Helldivers the past 2 nights, that's where I was playing, on the big TV with the deck dock.
That's cool. That'd be a fun game on a TV. In fact, I've noticed that it
is a fun game.
I've noticed that it's from Sony Entertainment. I assume it used to be, or it is originally a PlayStation game.
Even if it might not be originally, it is on the PlayStation. I think PlayStation Network, it was free on it, so I have played it on that. But the game I'm playing now is Persona 5, which I did play briefly on the PS4, and I did end up picking up Persona 4 on the Steam Deck, which I played a little bit. 5 on the deck has sunken its claws into me, and I don't know if either of you have ever played a Persona game. It's basically a mix of fighting, turn-based combat, and a social simulation where you play a high school student. And it's weird, but it really, really works. But the
That
games
sounds
are
like a
huge.
weird
Like,
combination. I'll say that.
and it's very Japanese. And so there's like a Pokemon aspect to it where you collect personas, you can combine personas to make different ones and inherit traits, and the personas determine your combat abilities. So it's really it's fun.
Interesting.
It's fun. Yeah. So it's a mix. When you're doing the fighting stuff, you're doing basically a dungeon crawl, and then if you can sneak past the enemies, great. Otherwise, you got to fight them. And then outside of the dungeons, you're building up your social attributes and making contacts and stuff, which enhances your abilities when you're in the dungeons. So it's a nice little gaming loop.
Interesting. I've seen you posting
Yeah,
pictures of it, and it looked very Japanese.
it is very, very Japanese. I picked up a new wireless headset. I meant to buy a Bluetooth one, but it's not. It's one that has a dongle. It's like one of the 2.4 gigahertz wireless, whatever. But that's actually working out well. Bluetooth has been a little flaky with my PlayStation controllers, and I don't know if it's because of the controllers or just Bluetooth on the deck. And Jason, do you do any wireless controllers on yours or not yet, or not so much?
I started playing with do I have it here? I found my I found my Steam controller.
I've got one of those somewhere around here.
And it works okay. I think I have to do some more programming on it and kind of see if I can get it to work a little bit better, but it worked okay. I didn't have any problems with disconnects or anything.
All right, and that's the biggest problem I'm running into right now is the disconnects. So that's not a big deal because I have a big ass USB extender that I just run over to my chair across the floor, and it's not a high traffic area once I'm gaming, so that's fine. And I have then the controller's hardwired. Um, the Steam Deck's a Linux box, and I've done some nerd stuff on it recently. One of the things I did was I managed to get BattleNet set up on it as a non-Steam app. There was a new Proton GE that I ended up finally installing. You can't install it automatically. You got to install a little utility to let you manage that. And Proton is the compatibility layer that lets it run Windows games, for those of you who don't know what that is. So Proton GE is actually a love child of a Red Hatter, like a guy who right now works at Red Hat. He works on that in his spare time.
That's cool.
Once my Red Hat rewards budget fills back up, I'm going to drop some on him.
I think I'd heard that, but it was never really confirmed. That's pretty cool.
I looked him up. He works for us. I looked his profile up, so it's totally legit.
That's cool.
But I got BattleNet working on it, which means that Diablo 2 Resurrected, it works on it perfectly.
Awesome.
And if I felt like dealing with stuff like StarCraft or World of Warcraft, I could play it on it too. And then the last thing I did this week, which was kind of fun, is I set up a series of scripts. Now, Steam, when you take screenshots in Steam on the deck, they end up in the individual directories of each game. And I found a script that someone wrote to symbolically link all those screenshots into a single target directory. So I wrote some scripts myself, open source, yay. So now I have a little utility that I can fire off from my laptop. It'll SSH to the DAC. It'll remotely run the command to collect those symbolic links, and then it will pull down those pictures to my local machine, as well as the pictures that you take using the camera inside of Disney's Dreamlight Valley, which is another game I play because I'm basically a 15-year-old girl. And so I've got all my screenshots from my stuff now on my Fedora box, which is now running Fedora 37.
Yay!
But yeah, I enabled SSH on the Steam Deck because I can.
Yeah, I haven't
So it's
updated
really cool.
my laptop to 37 yet, but I probably will.
Yeah. And non-nerd news, my daughter Maggie's getting married a week from Saturday, and the fiance's a decent dude. I like him. He buys me bourbon.
He buys you bourbon.
Treats
That's
are
the
good.
key.
He's a gamer, Star Wars fan, all the good stuff. So kind of excited about that. That's picking up my tux tomorrow. Ah!
Nice.
But that's what I got going on.
Cool.
I think
I
that
just
leaves Jason.
Well, I just realized there was one thing I forgot to throw into the announcements, and that is that this weekend, the 19th, is the DEF CON 610 pub crawl CTF in Easton, PA. So if any of you listeners
That's right.
are in the Lehigh Valley area, or even if you're within an hour or two and you feel like driving out for a good time, great food, some CTF challenges, come on out. I'm going to put a link to the event on Meetup in the notes. There is a small registration fee. We did that to fuel the top prize. So the more people who register, the bigger that prize is going to be. So if you are like awesome at CTFs, you might be able to make some money if you get a bunch of people to register and come with you. Take their money legally.
There you go.
Anyway, all right, go ahead, Jason. I'm putting that into the notes right now.
Okay. What am I up to? My wife is currently refactoring the majority of the house, so I have been playing with tools and cutting things and painting things and tearing things down and putting things up, and I suspect this is going to continue on for the foreseeable future. So that's been a chunk of my time. In the scant few couple of hours that I have off here and there, I've been playing Watchdog Legions, which I finally beat the other night. It's only been out for like 5 years or something.
I have not played a Watch Dogs game yet, and everyone's like, "You should play these games." But when they first came out, I was definitely out of the gaming scene, and now I feel like I have a lot of catch up to play.
It's very okay. So think of like a Grand Theft Auto, but with a more cyberpunk not quite as much cyberpunk as Cyberpunk. What is it, 2077?
Which is like Grand Theft
but
Auto
like
with Cyberpunk.
yeah. This
With
is sort of set in the future with a security, like information security bent on it, if you will. The hacking is nonsense. I mean, you basically point your phone at it and it hacks things. But it is fun.
like
the
the real
story's the story's interesting, and it's fun. I've played through all 3 games now. Legions gave me a little bit of problems because there was a save bug that drove me absolutely insane. But in the end, after kind of leaving it alone for a couple of years, it seems to they have mostly fixed it. And I was able to finally get through and beat the game. So it was fun. It was fun. So now, was I playing last night? Psychonauts 2. And I'll probably pick something else up to play. There's a Final Fantasy game I want to give a whirl. So that's kind of what other than that, it's been work and side gigs and just banging things on the house. That's about it. I'm boring these days.
Yeah.
And I would say that Cyberpunk 2077 is not really GTA. It's more like The Witcher 3 with a cyberpunk skin on it.
I've never played a GTA game, so that was completely tongue in cheek. I don't even know what I'm comparing it to.
They're fun.
Yeah.
They're lots of mindless violence.
I haven't touched Cyberpunk yet, mostly because I was waiting for it to become stable.
It's definitely
speaking of the
playable and stable now. I've
Yeah.
played,
And
I bought it only a couple months after launch, and I have not run into a single major issue with it.
And it actually will run on the deck, and it'll run well on the deck,
Yep.
and it's got a specific mode for Steam Deck and the graphic options.
Cool.
And speaking of The Witcher, apparently there's a new upgraded version, or they've apparently redone The Witcher 3 with like amazing graphics. That's supposed to be out like next week or something. Like
I
sometime,
thought it was
is it December? Like it's
mid-December.
sometime really soon. I just heard about it like the other day, and it was already like they were like, yeah, it's going to be out in like a week or two. So
Oh, nice.
I may I may grab that just because I really enjoyed The Witcher.
Word on the street was it was going to be free if you already owned it on the platform, and I own it on the PlayStation, so I should get it.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I may jump back into The Witcher then.
That's cool. A lot of times they do those
That-
remakes just to like get more money out of the same franchise. And yeah, right there,
The
Mark.
Witcher is the greatest game I've never finished. I finished the first area and got partly through the second area. It's the greatest game I've never actually finished.
Just to make more money, Nate? Are you referring to the Elder Scrolls games and the fact that they have remade that for every platform multiple times at this point?
Man, it's embarrassing how much I bought Skyrim. Ugh.
Well, the new Skyrim Super Ultimate Excellent Awesome Edition is out. You can
Yay!
use
Take
mods
my
or something
money.
on it now. Yeah. I've got 12 versions of it for the Xbox already, but 13's the lucky number. Let's go.
Yeah, right.
The
All right.
really insulting one is you had to buy the VR version separately.
It is kind of insulting. Although
Yeah,
that's
you gotta
that's
have the
how
VR headset for that sort of thing.
that's how Fallout did it too, though. Fallout 4 has a separate.
Same company.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Is it?
Yeah, be like No Man's Sky. Make VR part of it with
Yeah.
no extra charge.
Yeah. And to be honest, right? Like I tried Fallout 4 VR and it kind of sucked. Like
Yeah, it was not good compared. Yeah, once you do No Man's Sky,
yeah,
they,
No Man's
that's
Sky
a
is
very
a
high
pretty damn
bar
good interface.
VR game.
Anyway. All right, so I guess that's it for chat. We can move into the news. That might be record time.
Well, because it's been a long friggin' podcast already.
Can we go back and
But a good
talk
one.
about chat again? Because that's too
No.
short. We're going to lose listeners over this, guys.
No, I want to get some Persona in tonight, so let's
I get
keep
it.
going.
We're cutting into Mark's gaming. All right, we'll go on.
We
then.
already have.
All right, here we go. All right, so I couldn't not have a news article related to Twitter because this is just like a freaking dumpster fire going on at Twitter right now. And I'm not even covering half of it. We talked about some of it when we were talking to Jerry. If either of you have anything to contribute to this conversation about things that happened today that I may have missed, feel free. But this article is from Forbes. Sorry, what? You do or you don't?
I honestly have not been tracking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jason probably has, but he walked
Apparently
away
there's
now.
A bunch
I
of
don't know
stuff
where he
going on now.
Yeah. So apparently, so the article, and this isn't even current at this point. There's so many other things that have happened since I found this article. This is from Forbes, like I said. Twitter engineer fired on Twitter calls Musk's team a bunch of cowards. I mean, if there's any way to get yourself fired, it's to call the crazy billionaire a coward. But anyway.
But that was after it was
That was
fired.
after. That was
So
after
what
he
did
was
do,
fired.
Fire him more?
Yeah, so apparently
Double fire him?
over this past, was it over the weekend, I think it said? Yeah. One of Twitter's engineers, Eric Frohofer, I think that's how you pronounce that.
Sure, we'll go with
Frohnhofer. He tweeted basically like being apologetic about some slowness that people in what was it? I read this earlier, but there were people in a foreign country.
He's been working on Twitter for Android.
Right, but there was some slowness happening for folks in a certain region, and he was basically being apologetic for it, right? And he made some comments about having been a Twitter engineer working on the Twitter mobile client for Android for the past 6 years, and he didn't have a positive outlook on Twitter in general, and that turned into an actual exchange with the boss man Elon. In a very public venue, which is like they literally had this discussion on Twitter. There was a thread about it, and somebody like legit responded. Let me find the quote here, but this person basically said, "Where is it here? Come on!" He basically said, like, how can you have an employee like this working for you? Oh, here it is. With this kind of attitude, you probably don't want this guy on your team, right? So this was like another person on Twitter commented on this
Yeah.
thread toward Elon saying you probably don't want this guy on your team. And then Elon basically said he's fired. So he just like fired him in a thread on Twitter. And then it took, it said something like 6 hours. Like 6 hours later, his company laptop finally just like cut him off, wouldn't let him log in anymore. He was interviewed by Forbes, and he said, I don't even know where to send the laptop back to. That's how abrupt this was. Like there was no warning, there was no contact. It was just like they flipped a switch without even talking to him first. There was no like reprimand procedure. There was no warning. It was just like, bye. Elon said it. It's on Twitter. Goodbye. So yeah, this is the sort of world that Twitter employees are currently living in. Basically, like if you get on Elon's bad side, you may be fired. And the article goes in to talk about how like Twitter employees can't really trust each other anymore. They don't trust the direction that things are going. They don't trust the management above them. They feel like they're all walking on eggshells. I'm paraphrasing here, right? That's not actually in the article, but this is the feeling I get, right? Nobody at Twitter feels safe and secure in their jobs anymore. And that's like a real recipe for disaster. If you ask me,
Well,
right?
I think so. Elon came down with this declaration that people need to be hardcore and they need to be willing to basically throw their life into Twitter and work long and hard. And
Yeah.
if you're not willing to do that, then forget it. And apparently there's this pledge that people were supposed to sign to say, I am hardcore. Or they were going to be shown the door with 3-month severance.
Yes, Drill Sergeant,
And
I am hardcore.
And it looks like a scary number of, what do they call themselves internally? It's
don't
actually
know.
a stupid word.
I have no idea. I didn't know they had a word for themselves. They're not twits, are they?
Yeah, like no, but like at Google, they call themselves Googlers, and it's
Oh,
dumb.
like Red Hat people call themselves Red Hatters, right?
Yeah, and so at Twitter they have a similar type of thing, but apparently
They're called
shockingly
They're called
they're
what?
called tweeps.
Tweeps?
tweeps.
Tweeps.
Yeah.
Oh, there, it's even in the chat now. Thank you, Mauricio. Yes, Mauricio.
Yeah. So apparently a whole lot of tweeps decided, you know what?
We're tweeples.
F this guy. I'm taking my 3-month severance and I'm out. I'm not signing this pledge. Figuring they'll get a different job. Or at least not have their, like, because what kind of future, if you're staying on Twitter right now, like, talk about an unstable foundation. There's no promise at all that you'll survive.
Well, so I think you've got 3 different types of people. I mean, you've got the folks that are at Twitter right now. Well, that were at Twitter and that told Elon to go pound sand and have left, which apparently is a good chunk of them, including entire teams.
Yeah. Well, there's also the people that he like summarily just fired. What, 2 weeks ago now? There's like half of the staff.
he's got to swing them around and show that he's the guy in charge. But whatever.
Yeah. Well, it worked out real well for him.
You've got the people that are basically sycophants that are they're just eating up everything he does and wants, and they're just gonna do everything he asks for. And I think you've got potentially, I don't know what the makeup of folks at Twitter are, but there always seem to be folks who, okay, yeah, it's 3-month severance they could take if they leave today, but they're either scared, which is understandable, or they simply cannot afford to leave. And they're stuck. So there are trapped people, and they're going to be miserable. They're going to be absolutely miserable.
Well, but
and it sucks.
I mean, the point I would argue though is even if they feel stuck, isn't a guaranteed 3 months severance, and then having to spend the next 3 months hunting for a job better than I could be fired tomorrow, or the company could collapse tomorrow?
From a rational point of view, yes. But when you're in that situation, and I've been there, so when you're in that situation, the fear can be paralyzing, and because of that, you're going to stay with what's I'm going to use the word comfortable. Obviously, it's not necessarily a comfortable situation, but you're going to stay with what you know rather
The
than
familiar.
It's the old
jumping and
the
trying
devil
to
you
fix it.
know
Yeah.
argument, right?
Yes, exactly. And there's a lot of people like that, especially people who are neurodivergent. And gee, I wonder if there's neurodivergent people at Twitter.
No, can't be.
Lots of
IT's not full of those sort of people.
lots and lots and lots of IT people are neurodivergent. So it is entirely possible. There's an entire set of people who are they're straight up trapped. They just can't.
Yeah,
They can't function.
they can't process that. Yeah.
And when you have a bully like Elon, just throwing his weight around because he can, there's not a lot you can do. He's got the money, he's got the power, he's going to do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely sympathize. I'm the sort of person that stays in a job, even if it's not perfect, right? Like, I'm not a job hopper, so I can certainly understand that. And I never saw it as a negative in my personality, right? Like, you and I worked for that ISP way back when. I stayed there a lot longer than I had to. I had the skills and the what's the word I'm looking for? Ability, I suppose, to move on and out, and could have, but didn't, because I stayed where it was comfortable, even though it wasn't necessarily pleasant. So I guess I can understand that. I can see where you're coming from. So yeah, Twitter. We could probably spend the rest of the night talking about the dumpster fire that is Twitter at the moment, but we're not going to. We're going to move along to the next article, which is from Bleeping Computer. The U.S. government says Iranian hackers breached federal agency using Log4Shell exploit. And I mainly included this because Log4Shell is one of these, like, this is a year-old vulnerability at this point.
We fixed that a long time ago. Oh, and look, it was an unpatched VMware Horizon server.
It was fixed like the day we found out about it, maybe the day after, right? I remember this being like a high alert, and all of a sudden, boom, it's fixed. Sorry, go ahead, Mark. You have comments, obviously.
All right. So is this a VMware Horizon server, is that part of the VMware infrastructure crap?
I honestly have lost track of what the different pieces of VMware are. Horizon might be like their on-premise cloud offering. I'm really not sure.
I'm gonna look. Commercial desktop and app virtualization. Okay.
Yeah,
it's like VDI?
It looks like a VDI thing.
Okay. There you go then. So, yeah, let's see. What organization? The CISA. The FBI and CISA revealed in a joint advisory published today that an unnamed Iranian-backed threat group hacked a federal civilian executive branch, FCEB, organization to deploy XMRIG crypto mining malware. Oh, good. They're mining cryptocurrencies.
This fucking crypto ruins everything.
It does. But they did more than just deploy that. They also put a bunch of reverse proxies in place to maintain persistence. The thing that they compromised was a VMware Horizon server using Log4Shell. There was another. Oh, and then they moved laterally into Active Directory controllers. So VMware and Windows essentially was the attack vector here.
Yeah, these are like the dumbest nation state attackers ever.
Let's mine crypto, guys! Yay!
Yeah, yay! I've broken into a federal agency.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
I've got a foothold, and the first thing I'm going to do is put a fucking crypto miner out there.
Now, here's the thing, right?
Hello, red flag.
Hold on. Here's the thing. There is a mindset where I've broken in, I do a thing that's very noisy, and then I do a thing that's very hard to notice. And then the noisy thing gets fixed, and the thing that's hard to notice gets overlooked because they think they've solved the problem. This could be that. Like, they may not be idiots. Maybe they're idiots.
Yeah, maybe. This feels like morons.
Yeah, it could be morons.
I mean, they're clear. They're not using any sort of custom code on any of this stuff. You got the crypto mining malware, which is, I mean, you go buy that on the dark web.
But Jason,
then they're jumping through and using ngrok.
They used all the buzzwords. It's nation state backed.
I know.
It's Iranian, and they hit. This is obviously not just some kid in their basement using a bunch of stuff they found on the internet. That can't be.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's just so stupid.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. No, I absolutely
And
see where you're coming from. Whenever I see these things, I always wonder if it's exactly the way you're describing it. These people are idiots, or if there was some other motive here that we're not seeing and hasn't been reported.
yeah, it's also on top. I mean, I don't know what the FCEB does. It doesn't sound super important. I mean,
It's the FAQEB.
everything's important, but it doesn't sound like something that is going to
Yeah.
have national.
Federal Civilian
Security
Executive
implications.
Branch, man. They're an executive branch of something. The federal civilians.
But at the same, at
that
the
sounds
same
like
time,
an oxymoron, doesn't it?
I've heard of attacks that are send in the morons to break in
Yeah.
and make lots of noise, and send in the stealth guys behind them.
Yeah.
Using custom everything so that they can slip in there and get what they need to while the other guys
Yeah.
taking the brunt of it.
Yeah.
So maybe that's possible, but I don't. This doesn't feel like a target or an organization that's much of a target. So
yeah, fun stuff. Iran, federal stuff, the FAQEB has been compromised through Log4Shell. But you're right, you had the exact same response that I did, Mark. Log4Shell, isn't that a year ago? Well, obviously it hasn't been patched. Folks,
We
patch
fixed
it.
it.
Patch your stuff, guys. Patch them. If you
They
patch
need a
the
TAM.
stuff.
well, part of the problem is that I mean, now you're talking about VMware software.
It's a year
Now,
ago.
granted, it's a year ago, and this
It's a
stuff
year
there
ago.
was alerts put out about this, but there's a lot of software, like even when we were going through this and kind of looking for the Log4Shell stuff in the environments that I work in,
Yeah.
there was a lot of like, oh my god,
I
why
agree,
is
but
that there? What is
I
that doing there?
remember seeing advisories regarding Log4Shell, regarding specifically VMware's products. Maybe Horizon was even mentioned within a week or two of Log4Shell coming out.
Mhm.
There's no way they didn't know. Unless they were completely negligent. There's no way that they did not know that they were supposed to patch this thing. And it was a year
we
ago.
also-
If they got
we also
breached in the
don't-
first 6 months, that's like, oh, sorry, you didn't get the patch quickly enough. We'll give you a pass. A year?
Yeah, well, you still there's from folks that I know that work in government that work on this stuff. It is a lot of these places have the systems up and running, and the administrators they have keep the apps running, and they don't really know the infrastructure. They just don't have the staffing to be able to do it.
I still don't think that's a legitimate excuse.
Maybe not, but
Like,
it's,
I'm not
reality.
trying to blame any one specific person. I'm blaming the processes that are in place. Like,
Yeah,
this shouldn't happen a year afterward. This should not happen for something that's important.
yeah, and cross-site scripting and SQL injection should have been like gone
True.
decades ago.
True. But I mean, that's a little hard. That comes down to coding practices, right? Like any new developer who's writing a thing can easily make code that's susceptible to that. This is a library that was patched by the vendor that all you had to do was apply the update.
And there's frameworks that you could be using that you could just use those, and you don't get cross-site scripting, and you don't get SQL injection. I mean,
Yeah, but that's
there's
still
arguments for all of this.
that's still not as table stakes as simply applying the updates from your vendor.
Nate, you're in this industry.
I
It's
get where
not-
you're
it's
I get
not
where you're
that
coming
easy.
from. I get where you're coming from.
It's not that easy.
Applying updates from a vendor is a lot easier than making sure that all of your coders have adopted, safe coding practices. That's a different
agree,
ball of
but-
wax.
I agree, but it depends on what what is interrupted when you apply them, what testing has to be done in order for them to be applied. I mean, simple updates. Pretty much every job I've worked at, simple updates. It can be a major undertaking to patch things.
I understand.
The
Unfortunately,
issue I always ran into at Merck was getting applications who we gave essentially veto power, getting applications to approve the downtime for the patching. That's what would kill us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, and again, I'm not saying like absolutely the administrators of this particular agency are to blame. I'm saying that there is obviously a failure in process that let them go this long without patching it, and now they're paying for it. Like,
I don't disagree.
I don't know
with
how you can
I'm just,
disagree with that. There's a failure in process that shouldn't happen.
It shouldn't, but again, you know, like we don't know the
I
circumstances
understand
that are in there.
I understand how and why it did, and I understand that that's the stance
Yep.
you're taking. But I'm saying that it should not happen. This is a failure in
Nope.
policy. This is a failure in policy. All right. Moving along. I think I'm actually already... Oh, I'm at the second to last article. I got ahead of myself. Okay, so this one's from VentureBeat, which I've never heard of before, but whatever.
Yep.
It sounded like an interesting...
pretty big.
Okay,
My
No,
sister
whatever.
used to read Tiger Beat.
I don't even... Okay. Anyway, Intel unveils real-time deepfake detector. Claims 96% of accuracy rate, or 96% accuracy rate. And Gaius Baltar is currently shitting his pants. Anybody get that
It's a
reference?
Cylon detector. This is actually fascinating.
It is.
Essentially, what they're doing is they're measuring the light that's absorbed or reflected by blood vessels, and the color changes because a deep fake is not going to have that.
Right.
Yet,
So
yet.
Well,
yeah, right. Until
Well, it's
You'd have
another
to
arms
simulate
race.
it.
Yeah,
it is.
it's
It
another
really
arms
is.
race.
It really is an arms race.
But it's.
But,
I mean, this was predicted a while ago. People were, people were jumping up and down. Oh, deep fakes are going to be undetectable, and it's like, well, no, somebody's going to write a tool to be. able to detect
Eventually
it.
they'll be detectable.
It's that simple.
It's all a question of technology. So
And
let's
then
see.
they'll be
On
undetectable again when they do the blood flow simulation. You know.
yeah, right. But I mean, I guess the key is to make it sufficiently difficult to reproduce, right? So that the ability to detect it makes it too costly for the people to fake it, right?
Right. It's like, yeah, I have a deadbolt as well as a regular lock on my door. It's not going to keep someone out of my house is determined, but my hope is that they'll go to the neighbor
Who doesn't have a
sorry,
deadbolt
neighbor,
or something?
who doesn't have as good a security
Yeah.
setup as I do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem I see with this is that if it's looking for, changes in blood vessels, and like it depends on how good of a video was made.
Yeah,
right?
it depends on the quality of the
Shows
video. It
resolution
also
and- yeah.
the thing that gets me, and I'm sure they've thought of this because they say over and over again in the article this 96% accuracy rate. But women, or I guess anybody, right? Even anybody that's on film, professionally, will generally have makeup covering their face to like cut down on glare and to make their skin look perfect and all that stuff. Does that cover up the blood vessels so that it's difficult for this to detect the deepfake? You know what I mean?
I think you'd have to probably have makeup covering every single square inch of your skin,
I mean,
and it would have to be opaque.
maybe this is the 4% that they can't detect.
I don't know.
Women or people who wear too much makeup.
So it can't tell that Tammy Faye Baker is fake or real. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
I mean, and maybe they've already accounted for this and it's not a problem. I mean, you can't get to 96% when something as simple as concealer makeup ruins it, right? So, anyway, it's pretty cool because the deepfakes thing was, in my opinion, kind of scary, right? To be able to make a video that looks convincing of anybody doing anything else, doing something else that they did not do, the ability to detect that is important. I mean, like, there was a lot of, when the deepfake thing first showed up, there was a whole lot of, like, pretty celebrities getting put on porn stars' bodies because people are crazy about that kind of stuff, whether it's real or not, right? If it looks real enough, that's good enough for them. And there's a lot of stuff of like, I mean, there were a lot of funny things about like making President Trump say stuff he didn't say, right? And while we can all get a laugh out of that, it's still not okay, right? Like, it's not okay for anybody. I don't care if you like them or not, or if you agree with their politics or not. It's not okay to make the world think they said a thing that they didn't, right? And this is a deeper problem than just deepfakes, but at any rate, I'm glad that there's technology to help us detect this stuff. until there isn't again.
Yep, agreed.
All right, and the last article I have for today is from Photonics. Phoronix. It only took me 4 tries to get it right. There's a lot of like silent letters in here and an R where I didn't expect there to be. I thought that'd be a T, and it's not. Phoronix. It's really just like the first place that I found that in the list of Google searches that reported this, because I'm sure there's a million. But Fedora 37 is now available. GNOME 43. A little bit dyslexic tonight. GNOME 43 desktop, official Raspberry Pi 4 support, which is pretty cool. I've been looking forward to Raspberry Pi support for Fedora for a while. To be honest, I kind of hope that comes to RHEL. Like, now that it's in Fedora, I'd imagine that it could be possible to bring to RHEL, though I don't know if there's enough motivation to do so. But I would love to be able to run my preferred distro on a Raspberry Pi instead of having to use a Debian derivative. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with a Debian derivative, but you know how it is. You like the platform you like.
Yeah.
So, at any rate, it looks pretty cool. Mark, I think you said you upgraded to it already?
Yeah, I did an upgrade in place. Took about 15 minutes.
Have you had
reboot to...
Have you had significant time with it to say anything about whether you like the changes, or does it feel exactly the same as 36 did?
So when you use the control stuff in the upper right corner, I really like how they changed that. It's pretty cool. They consolidated everything into like a single panel, and
That's
your
cool.
most frequently used options are like they're turned into a button, but you can also click on the arrow to pop out the list. It's hard to explain, but I looked at it. I'm like, what they do? Oh, that is actually kind of cool. But so the good thing about it is that it doesn't. There aren't like major changes, right? Like,
yeah.
It. Other than like that's the biggest one I found cosmetically. Now I have a workflow that mostly revolves around terminals and browser windows.
Yeah.
So I can't speak to any really deep changes that have been made. The GNOME stuff seems to be either really close to what it used to be, or close enough that I haven't noticed a tremendous difference.
Yeah. Its
performance is good.
I will probably
But
update.
performance was good before.
I will probably update my work machine. I don't know. Maybe not tomorrow, but in the coming weeks. I usually give it at least a little bit of time to burn in before I jump on the new release.
Well, not that I consider myself a high risk, but wasn't this also the build that fixes the OpenSSL, that recent issue that was discovered? That's why it was delayed?
That may be true.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
Is that really a threat on desktop?
I don't know.
I mean, it's good to have it
Yes.
fixed. Is it?
Well, I mean, it's a vulnerability, and to be fair, Fedora 37 is going to be used as a server in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but I mean, on my particular laptop, am I at risk because I haven't updated? Is what I'm saying.
I don't know. I
depends
wasn't
on what
sure,
you're doing.
but
Yeah.
Depends on what you're
but
doing.
I had some time last night. I'm like, I'm gonna pop it up to 37, see how it goes.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
again, 15 minutes.
Nice.
So updating Fedora has gotten a little bit faster since the days I did it.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely improved.
Just
But
I actually did it through the GUI to prove a point.
Yep. Oh, I've been on my
Nate-
last
Nate-
several updates through the GUI on Fedora. It is
Yeah.
really a great.
Same.
Nate knows what I'm talking about. We used to set aside a day to do Fedora upgrades.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I remember those days. I've
Yeah.
been using Fedora for a long time.
Yeah, Jason and I used to run Fedora on our workstations at the college. And
Okay.
in fact, you were
So-
the crazy one that was running CentOS on your desktop when I got to the college. And I tried that and decided to go to Fedora because it's just like that's too much masochism for me.
Yeah, I wanted to match what we were running in the data center, but it didn't.
Yeah.
Didn't work out. So I ended up running Fedora. But then I had a quad head system that with the crazy drivers that I needed and all the other stuff to make it work. So every time we upgraded, it was an adventure.
Yep. I remember every time, because of those displays, really is why it was such a big deal. because the maturity of the NVIDIA driver was just not there. Every time you upgraded, it was like, oh shit, now I got to spend like an hour fixing the stupid driver and getting my Xconfig right, and yeah, it sucked.
Yep.
Every time it was just like a dread. That's all improved. That's so much better now.
Hashtag dread.
Hashtag dread. Judge dread. Anyway,
But yeah, I mean, good stuff in 37, but honestly, I haven't run into anything crazy.
cool. All right, and that is about it for the news for tonight. In fact, it's not about it. It is it. That's all of it. That's all the articles we have. Unless you guys slip one in. You didn't. Good. All right, so I think that's it for the show tonight. I'm looking forward. I want to go back and listen to the first part of the show because I feel like there was so much fun conversation in there that I may have missed something while I was doing normal show maintenance-y stuff. Yeah, it was good. If you guys are listening to this part of the show and have not listened to part A, go back and listen to it because it's a good one with Jerry.
It was a fantastic discussion with Jerry. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you'll learn, if you've been curious about Mastodon, you'll learn a lot of Mastodon stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I thought I had a pretty good handle on it, and I learned a few things, I think, from that conversation. So, good stuff. All right, folks. I think we're going to call it a wrap for tonight. Thank you for watching live. If you're watching live, if you're not watching live and you want to, you should go check us out on YouTube and Twitch. Just look for the Iron System and Podcast. You can find us on social media at just look for the Iron System and Podcast on either Facebook or Twitter if it's still up by the time you're listening to this. Like I said earlier, I don't have a Mastodon account for the podcast yet. I'm undecided as to whether I'm just going to consolidate it into my own personal one or have a separate one. I don't know. I basically have 3 Twitter accounts I manage, one for the podcast, one for myself, and one for my YouTube channel for the Jeep stuff. And to be honest, it's a little exhausting. If I can consolidate the 2 into one, I might just do that. But anyway, I'm going on about something that's really not worth wasting everybody's time. Yeah, subscribe wherever you find podcasts. And if you want to support the show, you can do so on Patreon. Patreon.com/IronSysAdmin. Second and fourth Thursday of the month, except next month will probably collide with Christmas. I didn't look. Maybe we'll do a one show again next month like we did this month. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I'll tweet it. All right, folks. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we will catch you in the next show. You guys have any final words?
Great show tonight. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it was good.
Pigeons. Pigeons is going to be my final word tonight.
Pigeons instead of is that the new social network you're designing?
It's just the first word that popped into my head. You wanted a final word.
Pigeoner.
Pigeons.
Pigeoner. For some reason, there was a point where my random word was always Tuesday, which made it not all that random because it was pretty predictable.
I did thoroughly enjoy the new Twitter logo, which was just a blue dodo.
God. And on that note, folks, we're going to call it a night. You guys have a good one. We'll catch you on the next one.
Not all.